So, former Vice President and traitor Mike Pence has decided to join the "Hey, I've got classified documents" party. We'll get into that, but I want to cover a news story that our news, that would be the lying legacy corporate corrupt mainstream media on this side of the world, is not covering. And yet it affects the United States. It's going to affect our economy. It's going to affect you and me very real, very personal, very soon. And our media is not talking about it. But the foreign media is. I got a good rant today.
Let's get ready to rumble! You can't handle the truth.
The Joe Biden administration is an unmitigated disaster. That is not an understatement. That is not hyperbole simply because he's a Democrat, I'm a Republican, and Republican commentators that do alternative media, they just trash anything that the Democrats do, etc., etc., etc. No. Joe Biden is actually an unmitigated disaster. His foreign policy is horrendous. He is bought and paid for by the Chinese government. And don't kid yourself and think that he's not. And everything that's going on with Ukraine right now is all about the fact that they made financial investment in him for influence, and now they're getting it to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. And of course, Lindsey Graham, John McCain's special friend, he's over there in this up to his eyeballs as well. But this is all payback. After all, Ukraine gave millions of dollars to Hunter to pass on to the big guy, and now they've come collecting. And that's a problem. Not only do we have a president who is literally compromised by foreign entities and foreign interest, but in the process, he is going to absolutely obliterate our economy. Now, to understand this, we have to go back to the 1970s. In the 1970s, we struck a deal with Saudi Arabia. In that deal, basically in the negotiation of oil pricing, we basically told Saudi Arabia, we won't really work you hard on the price. You get to set the price levels for your oil, for your product, and we won't dicker with you on that. We'll cap our own oil as to not be in competition with you. We'll pay the price that you're asking, but we're going to make you an offer you can't refuse. We're going to give you our military. Our military, the United States military, will not only protect the interests of the United States, we will protect the interests of Saudi Arabia. You need us, you just whistle and we're there. We'll take care of you. There's no need for you to have your own military. We will effectively defend Saudi Arabia with the U.S. military. And what we want for that is you don't have to pay us for that. You don't have to give us a great deal on oil for that. What we are going to require for that service is that every other country that you sell oil to, you will only sell it to them if they buy it in American currency. That's called the petrodollar. And that is what has propped up the United States economy literally going on 50 years. And that's not an understatement. You ever looked at our own budget here in the United States and wonder how can year after year after year we keep racking up trillions of dollars in, quote, debt, and yet life keeps going on and, I guess things are okay. Well, the reason we are able to incur all of this debt and really not feel much ramification from it, you have any idea the amount of money the United States government rakes in monthly and annually off of petrodollars? Stop and think about all the nations of the world buying their oil from Saudi Arabia. And they have to buy it in American currency, which means those foreign governments have to come to the United States banking system for currency to buy oil. Well, as long as they're buying oil in American currency, they'll buy other things in American currency. If they're going to have to pay an exchange rate anyway, they might as well buy other things with American money. And so it has been the US dollar that what has made it so strong in the world is that every country uses it to buy, sell, and trade with because of the petrol agreement between the United States and Saudi Arabia. Are you following me so far? Well, Saudi Arabia has basically told the weak, anemic, wimp Biden administration, take a flying leap. We're not doing that anymore. Bump, ba-dum, bump. They're going to let Russia buy oil in the ruble. They're going to let Xi Jinping, I call him President 11, they're going to let him buy it in Chinese currency. Remember when the whole Ukraine invasion, Russia came in and invaded Ukraine, and we've got to be in there and we've got to help Ukraine fight for democracy. If I hear George Takei one more time talk about the democracy of Ukraine, George, honestly, you are a complete and total dillweed. You are exactly why actors should never be allowed to give their political opinion on anything, because you don't know anything. You pretend for a living. Somebody has to write down on a piece of paper for you what to say, and then they turn a camera on and you just say it. That doesn't mean you're well informed. It doesn't mean you're smart. It just means you can read. And so that's what actors do. So I've never understood this fascination in this country where we want to know what celebrities think about stuff. The bottom line is they don't think. And the thoughts that they do give you, somehow it financially benefits them. That's how they survive. They're actors. So when you add George Takei and other members of the left out of Hollywood lecturing us like a Sean Penn on how we are fighting for the democracy of Ukraine. And some of us were saying, hey, Captain Obvious, Ukraine's not a democracy. And Zelensky is just as corrupt as Putin. But we keep listening to the lies and the spin and the propaganda that any minute now, Russia's going to collapse. No, they're not. No, they're not. Oh, have you seen how Zelensky and his rebels, they have fended off the mighty Russian army? Apparently they're not so mighty. Well, there is something to be said that initially Putin wasn't trying to wage total war on Ukraine. In other words, just level the place. He wanted 2 provinces out of there that were being bombed by Zelensky. It's funny. We could talk about supposedly horrible things that Putin has done to his people. We could supposedly talk about horrible things that supposedly Syria has done to their country, but we don't talk about the horrible things that we know Zelensky and his Nazis have done to their country, like bombing their own people. And Russia said that's enough. They came in, and of course, Ukraine was playing footsie with NATO. And yes, Russia obviously doesn't want NATO tanks and missiles on their border. So they went in. But they went in with the idea that, look, we're going to take these provinces back. So they weren't trying to level the country and kill everything that moved. They wanted something left that they would actually become part of Russia. Well, they're backing Putin into a corner to do the very thing that he really didn't want to do, which is level the country. And of course, this is all being pushed by us, the Biden administration, the CIA, the military-industrial complex. They're making money on the back end with everything that we're so-called selling and giving to Ukraine, which they're turning around and giving away on the black market. All of this weaponry we're sending over there. Funny how they're not actually using it. Where's it going? Oh, maybe they're selling it to Russia. And the billions of dollars we're sending over there, there's no accounting for how it's actually being used. Gee, makes you wonder how well Zelensky's living during a war. So, as a result, we put on these so-called crippling sanctions against Russia. We blew up their pipeline. We're going to hurt Russia. And I told you over a year ago, I told you, here's what's going to happen. Russia and China are going to get together, and they're going to create an economic system that's going to destroy the United States. People laughed at me. I had some of my own family members argue with me, told me that I had completely lost it. Well, guess what's happening, boys and girls? Yeah, Russia and China are getting together. And they've now backed Saudi Arabia into a corner and gotten Saudi Arabia to lift the U.S. petrodollar. World trade no longer has to be done in U.S. currency. Bum, ba-dum, bum. When all of these corporations here in the United States pulled out of Russia because Russia invaded Ukraine, and all the credit card companies here like Discover Card and American Express that were doing business in Russia, that's it. We can no longer deal with a country that these human rights and have invaded a sovereign territory and destroying a democracy like Ukraine. We're done there. The very next day, I asked a simple question. How are you going to collect your debt now? I mean, for a moment, I wished I lived in Russia right now and had like an American Express card with a $10,000 limit on it. I'd have run it up to the hilt, thrown it out, and laughed because they're not going to pay any of it back. You and I are, if you've got an American Express card. We're paying off Russia. See, all of these sanctions that were supposed to destroy Russia are hurting us. Remember when they even tried to blame what you and I were paying for gas, what you and I were paying for fuel oil, all on Russia? These are the sanctions on Russia, but this is the price for freedom. Be a good American and go along with it. None of this is hurting Russia. They're in a boom right now. And they and China have gotten together. They've created all of their own PayPal systems, their own credit systems. And Russia and China together have a military that could protect Saudi Arabia. Kind of like, you know how the mafia protects businesses from themselves? Well, that's basically what a Chinese-Russian military would look like. You're protecting countries from them, but nonetheless, they don't have to be dependent on the United States anymore. And this total collapse happened under Joe Biden, who was supposed to be the defender of democracy because it was Trump, the tyrant, that was going to do all these insane things. And you've got Joe Biden trying to take a victory lap that the world leaders are so glad he's in the White House now and not Trump. If they're glad, it's not because it makes America stronger. It's because America has never been this weak and this vulnerable. You know what Donald Trump was doing to prepare for the coming union of Russia and China, and knowing that eventually Saudi Arabia will make a pact with them militarily, and that will be the end of the U.S. petrodollar? You know what Donald Trump was getting America ready for? That was going to be the cushion so that we wouldn't face a recession, a depression, and a total, complete bankrupt collapse? What kept Saudi Arabia in check and in line and with us? Our oil industry. Where Donald Trump had uncapped everything and he was letting it flow, baby, flow, baby, flow. And basically letting Saudi Arabia know, number one, we don't need you. We've got our own oil supply. We're fine. And we start selling this around the world, we're going to undercut you. In other words, it was a businessman doing business. And all of the money that would have generated would have more than made up for the petrodollar going away. But see, what's one of the first things Joe Biden did by executive fiat right after he took the oath of office? He closed off our pipelines. He shut down American oil production and exploration. He sealed our fate to a foreign entity. Not talking about that in the news, are they, boys and girls? Because they got you wondering about documents. And just last week, Joe Biden begging Saudi Arabia not to lift the U.S. petrodollar, and they told him to take a flying leap. They talk about that on CNN? PMSNBC? NBC, ABC? Is George Snuffleupagus talking about it? No. You got to get it from a guy like me. Because the lying legacy corporate corrupt mainstream media bought and paid for. They're doing everything they can to try to cover for Joe Biden. And now you got a document scandal with Mike Pence. And again, I haven't totally worked all this out, what's up with that. Suffice to say this. I think this is about Team Biden knowing that their guy is in the crosshairs and they want him gone. So what they're trying to do now is they certainly know that other political individuals have taken files they weren't supposed to take. And so they've outed Mike Pence's cover. Like, see, this happens all the time. This happens all the time. So we shall see. I want you to know that I personally am fully cooperating with the DOJ after my secretary discovered classified files under the couch here in my office. No, I'm just kidding. We're not cooperating. No, I'm kidding. But that's how ridiculous this has gotten. Coca-Cola has kept better secret of the secret formula for classic Coke. Shoot. Colonel Sanders with his original recipe of, 8 or 11 herbs and spices that make up, Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's still a secret. How come those guys can keep a secret in the United States government, which is supposed to have the best intel in the world? And we got documents and classified files now being found in clearance racks at Walmart. I mean, that's really what it's coming down to. We are a joke and a laughing stock. Donald Trump didn't steal anything. He walked them out the door. He let everybody know he was taking them. And they were in negotiation with the government of what they were giving back and what they were hanging on to. You had them in a locked facility on an island at Mar-a-Lago under Secret Service surveillance. But nonetheless, the FBI had to go in and kick the doors down and take them to protect them. Joe Biden had stuff in a garage that crackhead Hunter had access to. By the way, did you hear that one batch of the documents before they made it to the Biden Penn Center? Now, does this not sound like the cheap line from an old film noir from the 1940s? They were stored in a building in Chinatown before they then went to the Biden Penn Center in a facility paid for by hundreds of millions of dollars in donations from China, of which President Biden received nearly $1 million in salary from said university to be a professor. But what Donald Trump did was way worse. And while we're all arguing that and debating that back and forth, the U.S. petrodollar is gone. Our enemies are building an alternative economy that will dwarf ours. But hey, you keep shaming people that aren't wearing the mask. Bread and circuses. Bread and circuses.